At the lawyer's office, my own daughter looked straight at me and said, "The house is mine now. You can move out." She smirked like I had no power, like I was already forgotten. I smiled back and told her, "Wait until he reads the will." What happened next shocked everyone. Before I share this story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. My name is Margaret Hayes. I am 70 years old, and for most of my life I believed my family home was more than just four walls and a roof. It was the place where I raised my daughter, where my husband Samuel and I built a life full of laughter, struggles, and memories that carried us through the years. Samuel has been gone for a little while now, and not a day passes that I don't miss him. He was my partner for nearly 50 years, and losing him felt like losing part of myself. After his passing, I tried to keep our home alive. I cared for the garden he loved. I sat in the living room where we once read books together, and I kept the old photo albums close by. Sometimes the silence felt heavy, but I reminded myself that this house held our story, and it gave me comfort. I never imagined it would become a battlefield. My daughter Clara is 42 now. She is ambitious, quick to speak her mind, and often sharper with her words than she needs to be. I raised her as best as I could, giving her everything I had. But since Samuel's death, Clara has grown cold toward me. Where I hoped for closeness, I found distance. Where I expected kindness, I was met with impatience. I kept telling myself she was grieving in her own way, that time would heal the sharpness in her voice. But the truth is, things were only getting worse. The day of the will reading was one I will never forget. The air felt heavy, and though the sky outside was clear, I carried a storm inside me. I dressed in my simple cream blouse and navy skirt. The clothes Samuel always said made me look graceful. As I buttoned the last button, I whispered to him, "Be with me today, Sam. I need your strength." When I arrived at the lawyer's office, Clara was already there. She stood near the receptionist's desk, her arms folded, tapping her foot with impatience. She wore an expensive blazer and heels that clicked sharply on the floor when she turned to look at me. Her eyes swept over me in a way that made me feel small, as if I were a stranger trespassing in my own family. "Mother," she said flatly, not even offering a smile. "Finally, I was starting to think you'd forgotten what time we were meeting." I forced a gentle smile. "I'm here on time, Clara. I wouldn't miss this." She gave a small laugh, more like a scoff, and leaned close enough that her words were meant only for me. "Good, because after this, you'll need to start thinking about where you're going to live. The house is mine now, and you can move out." The coldness in her tone struck me like a slap. My heart pounded, but I kept my composure. "Clara," I said softly, "this is still my home. Your father and I built that life together. You know how much it means to me." Her lips curved into a smirk, her voice dripping with superiority. "You've had your time, Mother. You're old now. You don't need that big house. I'll take care of it. You can find a small apartment or maybe a retirement place. You'll be fine." The words sliced through me. For decades, I had sacrificed everything for her, working long nights when Samuel was sick, skipping new clothes so she could have school uniforms, keeping food on the table no matter how thin the budget was. And here she was, dismissing me as if I were an obstacle to be removed. Before I could answer, Mr. Bennett, our family lawyer, appeared at the doorway. "Mrs. Hayes, Miss Hayes," he said warmly, "please come in. We'll begin shortly." We followed him into the conference room. The table was long and polished, with leather chairs that creaked when we sat. Papers were stacked neatly at one end, and a sealed envelope rested on top. Clara sat tall in her chair, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She looked like someone waiting for a prize she had already won. I sat quietly beside her, my hands trembling slightly in my lap, but my heart held something Clara didn't know, a quiet certainty. Before Mr. Bennett could even open the envelope, Clara leaned toward me again. Her voice was low, but sharp enough to pierce me. "Don't embarrass yourself, Mother. This is business, not charity. Dad would have wanted the house to go to me. Everyone knows it." I looked at her, studying the hardness in her face, and for the first time, I did not feel fear. I felt sadness. Sadness that my daughter had grown into someone who valued bricks and money more than love. I straightened my back and replied calmly, Clara, wait until he reads the will. Her smirk faltered for just a second, but she quickly regained it, rolling her eyes as if I were a foolish old woman clinging to dreams. You'll see, she muttered, her voice dripping with confidence. As we sat waiting, my mind traveled back to Samuel's last days. I remembered the way he held my hand, whispering with a weak smile, Don't worry, Maggie. I've taken care of everything. No one will take away what's yours. His words had stayed with me, steady as a lighthouse in a storm. And now, as I sat across from Clara, I held on to them like a lifeline. Mr. Bennet cleared his throat and began arranging the papers. Before we proceed, he said, glancing at both of us, I want you to know that Samuel put a great deal of thought into his will. He left specific instructions, and it's my duty to honor them exactly. I caught Clara's confident grin out of the corner of my eye. She was so sure of herself, so certain the house and everything in it would be signed over to her. But inside, I felt calm. Samuel had always been deliberate, thoughtful, and protective. He had seen this coming long before I did, and I knew his words would carry more weight than anything Clara could say. As Mr. Bennet opened the envelope and unfolded the first page, I sat tall in my chair. Clara shifted closer, already bracing herself for victory. I kept my eyes steady, my voice silent, but in my heart, I whispered again to Samuel, Now is the time, my love. Show her who I really am. As Mr. Bennet unfolded the pages of the will, I felt the weight of the room pressing down on me. My daughter sat across the table, her body language screaming confidence, her lips curled in that same smug smile she had worn from the moment I arrived. To her, this was already decided. She had claimed the house in her mind, and in her heart, she believed I was powerless to stop her. But I knew something she didn't. Samuel had always been deliberate, a man who thought 3 steps ahead of any problem. He had seen through people in a way I never could, and I trusted that even in death, he had made sure I would be protected. I took a slow breath and adjusted my hands in my lap, steadying them against the tremor of age and nerves. My instinct in the past might have been to plead with Clara, to remind her of the sacrifices I had made, to beg her to remember the childhood I had given her. But not today. Today, I chose silence and dignity. I would not let her see me bend. Before I read Samuel's instructions, Mr. Bennet said, clearing his throat, I want to acknowledge that he cared deeply for both of you. His words here reflect his love, his values, and his desire to ensure fairness. Clara smirked at me again, whispering under her breath, Fairness means I get what's mine. She tapped her manicured nails against the table, the sound sharp and irritating. I met her eyes and gave a small smile, the same one that had startled her earlier. It wasn't defiance, but it wasn't fear either. It was the calm of someone who no longer needed to argue. I leaned just slightly toward her and said softly, Wait until he reads the will. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her expression, a shadow of doubt. She quickly masked it with another smirk, but the seed had been planted. As Mr. Bennet began reading, my mind drifted back to the last conversation Samuel and I had shared about the future. He had been weak, his breath shallow, but his voice steady. Maggie, he had whispered, I know Clara. I know her hunger for things, for ownership, for status. She may not see you for who you are anymore, but I do. I will make sure you're safe. This home, our life, it's yours. She'll have her share, but she won't take away what belongs to you. Those words had been both a comfort and a burden. I hated thinking of my daughter as greedy or selfish, yet time had proven Samuel right. And now, sitting at that polished wooden table, I felt his presence more strongly than ever. Clara shifted impatiently, her heel tapping against the floor. Can we hurry this up? She snapped at Mr. Bennet. I have another meeting this afternoon. He raised his brows, but continued in his calm, measured tone. We will go through this step by step. Samuel wanted his wishes to be clear. I could feel the tension building in the room, thick like humidity before a storm. Clara's arrogance clashed with my quiet composure. and though she thought she was in control, the balance of power was already shifting. My decision to stay calm was not weakness, it was strength. If I had argued or raised my voice, she would have dismissed me as an emotional old woman. By staying steady, by holding on to the certainty Samuel gave me, I took away her power. My silence became louder than her smirks. I folded my hands on the table and looked at Mr. Bennet. "Please go on," I said, my voice firm though gentle. He nodded, glancing between us. Samuel left not only this written will, but also a personal message to be read aloud. He felt his own words would best explain his decisions. At that, Clara's face twitched. Her smirk faltered just slightly, as if the idea of her father speaking directly again unsettled her. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms, trying to cover the unease. I felt a quiet surge of strength rise within me. Samuel had not only written his wishes, he had chosen to speak them. His voice, his reasoning, his love would echo in this room, and Clara would have no way to twist it. I glanced at my daughter once more. She looked confident on the surface, but I caught the way her foot had stopped tapping, the way her jaw tightened. I knew then that Samuel's plan was already working. In that moment, I made a choice. I would not let Clara's cruelty define me. I would not beg or fight her. I would sit in my dignity, let Samuel's words speak the truth, and show her that I was not helpless. The room grew still as Mr. Bennet prepared to open the sealed letter. Clara shifted again, her smirk gone now, her eyes narrowing. I straightened my back, placed my palms flat on the table, and whispered one last time in my heart to Samuel, "I'm ready, love. Let her hear you." And with that, the tide began to turn. The lawyer held the envelope carefully, as though it carried more weight than paper should. He slid out a folded letter and adjusted his glasses before speaking. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock. My heart pounded as I waited to hear Samuel's voice through his written words. Mr. Bennet cleared his throat and began. "This is a personal letter written by Samuel Hayes before his passing. He requested that it be read aloud in the presence of his wife, Margaret, and his daughter, Clara." Clara rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath, "This is unnecessary." She leaned back, in her chair with her arms crossed, confident she already knew what the letter would say. But the moment the words began, the smug look on her face started to fade. "My dearest Margaret," Mr. Bennet read, his tone steady. "If you are hearing this, it means I am no longer by your side. I want you to know that I loved you from the first day I met you until my very last breath. You gave me a life full of laughter, comfort, and devotion. You carried me through hardship, and you never let our family fall apart even when times were hardest. This house we built together is more than wood and stone. It is the symbol of everything you gave, everything you sacrificed, and everything we created as a family." Tears blurred my vision as I listened. I clutched the edge of the table, holding myself steady. Samuel's words were as gentle and as firm as he had been in life. Mr. Bennet continued, "Margaret, this house is yours, now and always. No one else has the right to take it from you. It belongs to you because you earned it, because you made it a home. As long as you live, it is yours to keep, to protect, and to cherish. No one can push you out. That is my wish and my command." Clara shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her smirk vanished, replaced with a tight jaw and wide eyes. She glanced at me, but I kept my gaze on Mr. Bennet, refusing to let her see me break. The lawyer turned the page and went on. "To my daughter Clara, I leave you with both love and a reminder. You were given every chance in life because your mother sacrificed her own comfort to provide for you. When I was ill, it was your mother who worked extra hours to pay your tuition, to keep food on the table, and to hold this family together. She did it quietly, without complaint, because that is the kind of woman she is. I hope you never forget that without her, you would not be the woman you are today." Clara's cheeks flushed red. She opened her mouth as if to interrupt, but Mr. Bennet raised his hand politely and kept reading. "Clara, you will inherit financial assets that I have set aside for you, investments that will allow you to live comfortably. But the house, the home your mother built and sustained, belongs to her alone. Do not challenge this. Do not take from her what she rightfully earned. Instead, I ask you to honor her, respect her, and learn from her example. If you choose bitterness instead of gratitude, you will only dishonor yourself. The silence after those words was like a heavy curtain falling. Clara's face hardened, her lips pressed tight, but she had no words. The arrogance she carried into the room had drained away, leaving her exposed. Mr. Bennet folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. Those were Samuel's exact words. His instructions are legally binding. The house and all associated property belong entirely to Margaret Hayes. The financial assets designated for Clara are outlined separately. I sat quietly, tears rolling down my cheeks, not because of the house, but because of the love I felt radiating from Samuel's words. Even in death, he had stood by me, defended me, and made sure my voice was heard. For weeks, Clara had treated me as though I were disposable, but in this moment, I felt seen, valued, and honored. Clara pushed back her chair suddenly, the legs scraping across the floor. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "He's gone. He doesn't get to decide what happens now." Michael, no, not Michael, but Mr. Bennet, looked at her firmly. "He does, Miss Hayes. That is the very point of a will. Your father's decisions are final, and they are the law." Clara glared at me, her anger simmering, but I didn't flinch. For the first time in years, I felt taller than her, not because of power, not because of property, but because I held something she couldn't touch, dignity. I folded my hands and spoke softly, but my voice carried more strength than I expected. "Your father saw me for who I am, Clara. That's something you've forgotten. Maybe one day you'll remember." Her face twisted with frustration, and without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the office, leaving the door swinging behind her. The room grew still again. Mr. Bennet leaned back slightly, his expression softening as he looked at me. "Samuel loved you very deeply, Mrs. Hayes. He wanted to make sure you never doubted that." I nodded, unable to speak, my heart full. In that moment, I felt Samuel beside me, as if his hand were on mine, reminding me that I was never alone. This was the moment that changed everything. My daughter's arrogance had been silenced. My husband's voice had spoken from beyond the grave, and I had been given back my dignity. The battle was over, and I had not only survived, it was clear to everyone that I was stronger than they ever imagined. When Clara stormed out of the lawyer's office, the sound of the door slamming echoed through the quiet halls. For a long moment, I sat still, staring at the polished table where Samuel's letter lay folded neatly. My tears had dried, but my heart was overflowing with emotion, love, sorrow, relief, and even a strange sense of triumph. I had walked into this office expecting to be pushed aside, but I was leaving with my dignity intact and my husband's love wrapped around me like a shield. Mr. Bennet gave me a kind smile. "Samuel thought of everything," he said gently. "He wanted to make sure you were cared for, not just financially, but emotionally too. He wanted you to hear his voice again." I nodded slowly. "He always protected me, even when I didn't realize I needed it." My words trembled, but I felt a strength rising within me that had been buried for too long. Walking out of that office, the sun felt warmer on my face. The world outside hadn't changed, but something inside me had. For weeks, I had allowed Clara's cruel words to weigh me down. She called me old, useless, a burden who didn't need the home I had built my life around. But Samuel had reminded me that I was none of those things. I was the heart of this family, and without me, there would have been no foundation for her to stand on. That night, when I returned to my house, I paused at the doorway and looked around. The garden Samuel and I had planted together still bloomed with color. The walls held photographs of birthdays, holidays, and simple Sunday afternoons. This house wasn't just a piece of property. It was the story of my life, and now it was mine to keep, just as Samuel had promised. Clara didn't come by in the days that followed. She sent a few short text messages, angry and cold, claiming that the will was unfair. At first, I thought I might try to reason with her to bridge the gap between us. But then I realized something important. Love cannot survive where respect does not exist. I had spent my entire life giving her everything I had, and she had chosen to see me as an obstacle instead of a mother. That was her burden to carry, not mine. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by with a pie. She had heard whispers about the will reading and wanted to check on me. "Margaret," she said kindly, "we all knew Samuel adored you, but to hear how he stood up for you, even after he was gone, that's something special. Not everyone gets that kind of love." Her words stayed with me. I realized that Samuel's letter wasn't just about property or inheritance. It was about giving me back the confidence I had lost. It was his way of telling me that my life still had value, that I was not to be dismissed or forgotten. In time, I began to find peace. I spent more hours in the garden, planting new flowers in Samuel's memory. I joined a community group at the church, where I found friends who lifted me up and reminded me that life was still full of possibilities. I even started writing down my memories in a journal, hoping that one day Clara might read them and finally understand what I had done for her. As for Clara, she eventually quieted down. Her anger faded into distance. We spoke less and less, and though it hurt me to accept that my daughter had chosen pride over love, I refused to let her bitterness poison the rest of my life. Samuel had given me the greatest gift, a reminder that my worth wasn't defined by anyone else's opinion, not even my own child's. I learned a powerful lesson through all of this. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who respects your sacrifices, who honors your place in their life, and who remembers the love you gave without expecting anything in return. Now, when I walk through my home, I do so with my head held high. I no longer hear Clara's dismissive words echoing in my mind. Instead, I hear Samuel's steady voice. "You are the heart of this family, Maggie. This home is yours." And with every step I take across these floors, I know he was right. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never allow anyone to convince you that you are disposable. The love, time, and sacrifice you have poured into others matter, even if they forget. And sometimes, even after they're gone, the people who truly loved you will find a way to remind you of your worth. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing your voices and knowing these stories connect us across so many places.